This podcast episode contains discussions about anxiety, depression, and suicide, which may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. We understand that this topic can invoke strong emotions and personal experiences. It's important to prioritize your mental well-being, so please exercise caution while listening. Please note that this podcast episode is not intended to replace professional therapy or to be medical advice. If you are currently struggling with your mental health or are having thoughts of self-harm, we strongly encourage you to seek help from a qualified mental health professional or contact a helpline immediately. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Hustle and Hughes podcast, a place for Black and Brown entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Afnan Idris, and this week I'm bringing my actual therapist, Dr. Torre Prothro-Wiley, on the podcast. Dr. Torre is an author, an executive coach, and a speaker from Atlanta, Georgia. She also has 20 years of experience as a licensed therapist. She's also the creator of Mindfully Me, an interactive card game to help people learn more about mental health and to learn about coping skills to help keep you inspired. In this episode, I share some of the things that I personally learned from therapy. Additionally, we'll learn more about what Torre says is critical for other entrepreneurs to learn as well. If you haven't already, please take a minute to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Let's jump in. Dr. Torre, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I am so excited that you're here. When did I meet you? 2016?
Yes. 16, 17, yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
You had just started your practice?
Yeah, I had just started my practice in Buckhead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you, what is your earliest memory? I think you were saying before we started recording that you remembered when I called.
Oh yeah, the thing that's funny is when you're going into private practice, a lot of times you work under someone else and then you eventually, so I had been working in private practice for probably about 4 or 5 years before I started working in Buckhead. But that was my baby, my first experience being sole owner, proprietor, all of that. And so, yeah, I do remember the calls and people coming in because it was my show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
That's amazing. I love it. So for context, Dr. Torre, was my therapist when I was living in Atlanta for 5 years when I first moved. So she was my therapist before I was married, when I was trying to navigate being by myself in Atlanta. So she has seen me come through so many phases. Yes. And I'm so excited to be here with you because I've obviously been in Dallas for three years and some change, which is crazy that it's been that long.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Because I left in 2020.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to connect with you and to just kind of catch up with you because we caught up briefly, but we haven't actually talked.
I know, in a while.
Yes. And so I'm excited to kind of talk to you now really about your expertise because not only are you an entrepreneur and obviously you have a PhD, so you're a doctor, of course, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't get a lot of time to process emotionally how their experiences kind of rear up, especially in business.
Yes.
And this will also be like a recorded therapy session to a certain extent for me.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to be as open as possible in this episode. So I know that we've talked about there being celebrities who are now publicizing their journey with therapy.
Yes.
So I want it to be a little bit of that, but full transparency. If we start talking about some real I will cut it, and I have no problem. I have no problem telling y'all to go to hell. That's my business. But without any further ado, Dr. Torre, please introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, I'm excited to be here, too. Thank you so much for inviting me. I was tickled pink when you told me. I was like, oh, well, this is so cool. I have been I am a native of Atlanta. I've been a therapist here now close to 17, 18 years.
Woo.
Yeah.
You got some experience under your belt.
Telling on myself. But ultimately, been in business now, private practice solely on my own, about 8-9 years now. Worked in many outfits, started out working, believe it or not, in addiction. That's how I kind of
I didn't know that.
I worked with addiction. But it was kind of like a who's who of addiction work because it was older professionals. So it was kind of almost like a country club for people in corporate America that struggle with addiction. It was only alcohol addiction too. I didn't work with drug addiction, just alcohol.
Okay.
But that's how I started, and that was right after I got licensed and right after I'd done some community health work as well. It kind of bounced around and did a lot of different things, but primarily always loved working with mood disorder and relationship work. And so that's where I have really put my roots in Atlanta, is relationship and mood disorder. So I do individuals and couples.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fred and I have both been on your couch. So, wow. I'm kind of at a loss for words to a certain extent, because when I think back to where I was when I first found you, and I definitely consider you like a mother figure, even though like you definitely give like more like auntie vibes, I would say.
Okay, I'll take
Right?
it.
Like you're just a few years older than me, and you have enough experience to kind of be able to warn me about what's coming up, but also to wise enough to let me learn from my own mistakes. And I tell all the time on the podcast that for me, I'm very particular about my therapist. I typically want them at least 10 years older than me. You have to have been married, preferably still married, and with children, and have like a wide experience of clients and people that you've served before. And you definitely checked all those boxes when I found you on Psychology Today. And I also look for like, how detailed is your profile, and like, did you put effort into your picture? Like, those are the things that kind of matter to me when I'm looking, because it tells me about how serious you are about your practice.
Very much.
And from the very beginning, very, very professional. But also, I think I told you when I first was looking for a therapist, I was like, I don't want somebody to like throw the book at me. I want somebody to be like, listen, little girl, what you need to be doing is da-da-da-da. Like, I'm here to really do the work, and I don't want you to coddle me. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yes. It's funny when you were talking about what you were looking for. I remember all of the questions you were asking on the phone. Like, that's so funny.
The intake, like,
Yes. You were like, do you do this and do you do that? And da-da-da-da. And most people, when they are in a place in their life where they feel like they need therapy, they're just needing help. And so they're not as investigative.
Listen, I had questions. I had a very unique set of circumstances, and even though I know you have to date your therapist, I really wanted to try to get it right on the first time.
Yeah.
And, for context, I had moved to Atlanta from Virginia all by myself. It was like my first real big girl move, right? Like, I moved to Virginia, but that was only like 3 hours from home. And, I could still drive to get to my mama's house. But in Atlanta, if people didn't talk to me for 2 or 3 days, they didn't know if I was dead or in a ditch somewhere. So that was like a really big thing. And, starting a new job, and there was a lot. And I am really grateful looking back that I had you there, because we unpacked all types of stuff.
All types of things. Yes, we did.
Yes. And so here it is now. I'm an entrepreneur, and I wanted to kind of just understand from your perspective, like, what made you go into therapy and why the specialties that you decided to do, before we get into some of our stuff.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. When I was 10, I watched this movie called, oh God, I'm having a brain flub, but Dressed to Kill.
Dressed to Kill.
That's the name of it, Dressed to Kill, with Michael Caine and Angie Dickerson. And in the movie, Michael Caine is a psychiatrist who cross-dresses and murders his victims.
Okay.
Now, I know this sounds really weird.
Very weird for a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I was not supposed to be watching the movie, first of all.
Right.
But I got lured in, and what was so interesting, which really is weird for me to even say, was the dialogue between he and his clients. Now, you would think that would be like the more boring, the not as exciting, not as...
For a 10-year-old, yeah.
But for a 10-year-old, I was drawn to how they had that dialogue and that connection. And fast forward, I go to college. I'm going to college to be a broadcaster. Like, life had changed. I wanted to go into communications. I was a communications major, but I took sociology as an elective, and it all came back. And so I ended up changing my major from broadcasting communications to sociology with a minor in political science. I thought, well, worst comes to worst, I'll go to law school. hated law. To constitutional law, hated it. I was like, oh no, this is not for me.
I can't believe you went to law school.
No, I didn't go to law school.
You
I
did
took
it.
constitutional law. I took that as an elective
Okay.
undergraduate. And that's like class particularly that they tell students to take to see if they're interested. And I hated it with a passion. Did okay in the class, but just
It wasn't your thing.
wasn't my thing.
Okay.
Long story short, went around a lot of other career paths before I circled back to psychology. And by that time, I was married with kids. Went back to school, got my master's, did really well, got my doctorate. And there you have it. But I've always been drawn to intimacy and connection.
Listen, it's the things that you've taught me. So there was one of the first things you taught me was, where do you hold stress? And when I tell you, I was like, where do I hold stress? And you're like, yeah, like, is it your stomach? Is it your fist? Till this day, it took me years, but now throughout the day, I'm always relaxing. It took so freaking long to catch it, but now it's just a regular thing. I'm just like, drop your shoulders all the time. And like, I've gotten in a habit where in an hour, it's probably like once every few hours, I'm just checking in with myself and I'll notice. And I'll say it out loud to people and they'll be like, oh my God, I didn't know my shoulders were like all the way up here to my ear. But that was one of the first things that you taught me. And I was like, this woman is a freaking genius. We curse on here, by the way.
Oh, lovely.
Okay. Which I know you're no stranger to. You are a class act, but you will let
I say I'm saved, but I curse a little.
he takes us as we are, okay?
That's right.
So that was like one of the first things that you taught. And I was like, I knew it. I knew this woman was the one for me.
Oh.
So I don't even know where to start. Let's do this, actually. Tell me a little bit about what made you decide to go into your own practice? Because as we got to know each other over the years, I did learn that you did everything from considering, like you said, like a law degree at one point, but you got your master's, you were waitressing and bartending at one point. Yeah. And so explain, like, just for context so that people listening know that this is not a woman who's not been around the block and understands real life experiences.
Well, I will say this, like, I feel like my whole life I've been counseling people, okay? I was the kid that people came to and shared their secrets with. I was the kid that parents would come up and say, such and so's having a hard time, would you talk to them? Because I was always kind of known as being level-headed. I had my side, don't get me wrong, I wasn't this perfect child, but I had a lot of insight. I think I've always had a lot of insight. I think I've always kind of looked through a lens of being more practical and honest and integrity. Those things were important to me at a very young age. And so I kind of ended up kind of having a hodgepodge of things in my life as a counselor. I was a hairdresser.
That's right, you did do hair. When I tell you this woman has done everything, y'all, everything. Go ahead.
So literally, I finished college and was like, oh God, I don't want to get my master's right now. So I went to cosmetology school and I did hair for about 4 or 5 years. I was still counseling. People were getting in my chair, telling me their business. When I was bartending and when I was waitressing, people would come in, tell me their business, or my colleagues or coworkers on staff would just find their way to me and tell me what's going on. I'm the person in the family where people will call and say, look, I got to tell you something.
Did that ever get overwhelming?
Oh, it's still sometimes overwhelming, Even though I know I am doing purpose work, I know I am in my niche, my vein, I know I can do this in my sleep. Yes, I did not realize until probably 4 years ago that I'm an empath. Like I didn't embrace it. I didn't accept it. I didn't, but that's basically what it has been over these years, is that ability to empathize, to share with a person, to sit in their space, to sit in their pain. It's just something that I naturally do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a therapist?
Yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay.
So sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. I'll be very frank. There have been times where I've had, yes, a very consistent therapist. And to be honest, right now I am I'm in search of another one.
What do you look for in a therapist? I'm just curious because you're the bar. So what the hell? You looking for a black unicorn at this point?
I am looking. I'm looking for someone who is skilled, of course, who has experience. But I'm also looking for someone that's going to see past me.
What do you mean?
Because we all have this persona that we put up. We all have this part of ourselves that we project. Most of the time, to be honest, in working with clients, I don't get the real them till about 6 months in.
Is that how long it took for me to stop?
No, because you were really seeking it.
Okay.
And you were so like investigative and you researched a lot. Like there are some people that it is just so natural, the process of therapy. But for most people, they are reluctant.
Some people will not go and try to talk to somebody. They'll be like, tell my business to somebody I don't know, especially in our community too.
And I have a handful of those now that tell me, oh my God, Dr. Torre, I really didn't want to like you. And I still say, you don't have to like me. Use me. You gotta like me, but.
I love that.
Yeah, use me. I mean, it's so beneficial to have somebody that will just sit and let you be you. We play, especially as Black women, we have so many hats that we wear.
All the time.
And so people always have this expectation of something, right? But to sit in front of somebody and they say, no judgment, just be you.
What would you say as a well-educated, at the highest level, therapist and doctor, what would you explain to someone who hasn't been a therapist? Like, what's the purpose of therapy in your mind? How do you define therapy? Like, what are you supposed to use therapy for? Because I have my own, bias of what I go for. But I'd love to hear your definition of, like, therapy is this as your definition.
Therapy is somebody that assists you on your journey of self-discovery, regardless of what that circumstance is at that time. So if you're trying to figure out why you cannot trust your mate, or if you're trying to figure out why you can't excel on a job, or if you're trying to figure out why your friends mistreat you or are not there for you, a therapist is someone that's supposed to sit down, hear you out, and then support you in the way that you need to be supported. That's why one of the things, and I do this with every client, I ask them, what is your understanding of therapy and what are you looking for? Now, it's kind of a trick question.
Yeah.
Because you may tell me that you don't really want me to talk. You may tell me that you just want to have conversation. That's what I'm going to do initially. But I can almost guarantee within that process, you're going to start asking me, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? You're going to want more. Yeah, I just feel like that traditional model of it's like a Rogerian therapy, where you just sit with a person and you just nod, that's over with.
Yeah, no. I don't know how you learn from that, because I can do that to the wall at home, really.
Well, to be honest, I mean, people really have had breakthroughs with that from the standpoint of hearing themselves. And they go, oh my God, there's an answer. Most of the time, I'm giving you all my tricks. Most of the time, people tell me the answer in the first session. They don't even realize it.
Give me an example.
First or second session. So let's say somebody comes in and they sit down and they say, I'm in a relationship and I'm struggling because the person has done X, Y, Z, and I really don't like that. And if they would just do X, Y, Z, blah, 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 the answer is that's not the person for you, right? But you're not ready yet. So my job is to start to reflect back to you all the things that are not good, that don't feel good, or don't feel natural. Because sometimes it's not that the person's a bad person, it's just not a good fit, right? And so I have to, and to be honest, I have sat with some people for years before they said, I think I have a problem, but I'm like,
girl, I could have told you that 3 months ago, 3 years ago.
We knew that 30 minutes into our first session, but
they have to get to a point where
they have to get to a point where A, they hear it, B, they believe it.
Yeah, because the receiving part.
C, they're ready to change.
Yeah, because there's been moments where I've come to you and I'm like, Dr. Torre, I'm ready to do this, and you look at me like, are you sure? When your tone drops, I'm just like, oh shit, here we're about to go.
That's so funny because my kids have all said, as long as her voice doesn't drop, she's fine. When her voice drops, you're in trouble. Or when her voice drops,
I know.
Here it comes.
Here it comes.
Like, really? I guess so.
It's a telltale sign. I'm like, oh, here we go. And I know I'm not going to like it. And I think that for those who are listening who have never been to therapy, you do have to make sure that you're matched well with
Oh,
somebody.
absolutely. It needs to be a rapport.
Yeah. What advice do you have for people who like are thinking about therapy, but they are nervous about telling someone their business just for it not to be a good fit? Like a lot of friends who I've encouraged to go to therapy, that's one of their reservations. Like, or they tried it once and it didn't work. They didn't vibe with that person. What advice do you have for those folks who are
The
listening?
first thing is you got to really be ready. I think a lot of people are dipping their foot in the pond, but they really know they're not ready to do the work because it is work. I mean, it does not feel good all the time. You go in there and you start facing some of your stuff, and it's like, this hurts, or this is uncomfortable, or I don't know what to do with this. So the first thing is, I really need to know that I'm ready. The second thing is, I'm going to keep looking until I find the therapist that fits me. I tell clients all the time if they call me. So, I have some clients that call me and I was referred to you. I know I want to work with you, and we move forward. I'm not sure about therapy, and I'll say, hey, you need to pick 3 therapists. Now, if you sit with me and you figure out, oh, this is it, okay, fine. But if you sit with me and you're not, go to the second one, go to the third one. Now, people usually are lazy. They don't want to tell that story over and
That's
over.
the thing.
Well, I don't even necessarily want to say lazy. I mean, some are, but some it's painful.
It's painful to recount
Right.
it. It's like, hell, I'm
So-
trying to get help for this.
Yeah.
I don't want to do a world tour.
Right.
All the therapists in Atlanta be like, oh, she came to see you, girl. She got to.
Yeah, I agree though. I think that people feel like, oh my God, I gotta take my clothes off. You know?
I'm exposing
I'm
myself.
exposing myself. And to be honest, like, I get it. Like, when I first started really marketing through social media, that's how I felt getting in front of a camera. Like,
Yeah.
people are gonna, what are they gonna? So I can only imagine when it's something really deep and dark that, I've worked with people, I kid you not, almost a year before they tell me the it. Like the
thing they're really there for. Because what is it? They don't trust you, or it's
I think it's a combination of trust. I think it's a combination of once I let it out the bag, what's next? Like and some people really hold their trauma close because it's the only way they know how to hold it. Like I don't know how to take this and put it down because this thing has defined me.
Yeah.
for so
Or
long.
what if I don't want to acknowledge it because what if I can't survive it?
Yes. And the thing is, and I'm going to say this so sincerely, the freedom is in the saying. Just saying it. Like I've had some clients sit with me and they say, oh my God, I've been wanting to say that for 10 years. I've been wanting to say that for 8 months. I've been wanting to say that for 9 years. Like they've been just holding it. And they finally drop it. And it's so anticlimactic too, because they think it's going to be like,
This big thing.
right? And I've heard some things that are just absolutely unimaginable. To some things that it's common, but people house that pain very uniquely.
I missed you.
I missed you too.
My God, just so profound. And I think the other thing too was like, I never felt like there was judgment. There were moments where I knew that you were looking at me like, this is not that damn hard. But you acknowledged and held space for the fact that I wasn't ready.
You weren't ready, and it takes
I wasn't ready.
time.
And there was never that feeling of judgment or anything. And sometimes I would even have to tell you like, all right, just rip the Band-Aid off. What is it? What am I missing? And you're like, are
Give
you
it to
really
me.
ready? Yeah, just give it to me. And I'm like, and you're like, are you really ready? Because I'm going to say it. And I'd be like, yeah. And you'd say it, and I'd be like, okay, maybe. Right? But every one of those difficult moments that I pushed through was definitely, I grew from it 100%.
Yeah.
And over time, I became less and less afraid of the moments of confronting the thing, the it, right? And I just like, not all therapists have that. So like, I know that you said from when you were a young child that people just kind of shared with you and reflected and things like that. But like, where did you get that from?
I think it's God-given. I do. I think it's just my gift. I do. Because when I think about, I never forget when I told my father that I wasn't going to be a broadcasting major, because my father had this whole thing mapped out for me, that I was going to be this anchor woman. I was going to be on
see that,
television.
though.
And a lot of people say that too.
my
They're
God.
like, I could totally see you going into television. And when I came home, And I told my dad, I said, I think I'm gonna change my major sociology. He was like, what? Who wants to listen to people's problems for a living?
Oh, Lord.
And it sounded so
Depressing?
It did. I didn't want to use the word depressing. I like just heavy.
Heavy,
Right?
yes.
But I think about it too on those days where I'm tired and it's hard. But I was made to do that. And I know that. So it's like,
And did you know that from that sociology class that you took in college?
I did not. I just knew that it was very interesting to me why people do what they do and in what manner they do it. Like how people act a certain way in a group, in a crowd, and how certain people act individually, alone.
Yeah.
Like sociology is not so much from you got psychology and sociology. Sociology teaches you the behavior of people, period, in settings, individually. And so that kind of was the lure that kind of pulled me in. But then when I started really focusing in on psychology and understanding all of the other nuances and theories behind it, I was like,
wow.
yeah, it made sense, and it felt, I never thought of it. It felt like home.
Yeah. I love that. I know I've said this like a few times in the episode, and for y'all who are listening or watching, like having a good therapist really is life changing. It really is life changing. And I know that you've had tons of clients who you've seen grow and who have told you, but like, does that ever have you ever take a moment and like reflect in that? First of all, you are a woman of God, which is important to me, but, and not just a woman of your God, I would say, you're also very, very cognizant about making sure that if people are intentional about their walk with God, that you honor that. I remember one session, you said, I didn't know that you weren't Muslim. And I was like, excuse me? It was like unrelated to, I think I was venting about my job or somebody was giving me a hard time. You said, I thought you were Muslim. I said, Torre, I've been with your ass for 3 years. What do you mean? Of course I'm Muslim. And you were like, but I thought Muslim women, believe in Allah. And you said it perfectly and everything. And I was like, oh shit, she about to give me one of them lessons. I feel it. And I was like, Tori, I am. What are you saying? You're like, for someone who's supposed to be a believing woman, you don't have a lot of faith, do you? I thought you were supposed to give it to him. Isn't that what the Quran says? I said, I don't pay you for this shit. And you were like, you say you believe, but you don't. When's the last time you fasted? When's the last time? I said, I ain't coming for all of this shit today. But that really meant a lot to me because up until then, I never had a therapist who would be willing to go that far.
Yeah.
And I know that you're very intentional about your walk. You would tell me so openly about the prayer calls you and your sister-in-law would do. And just, you'd have your devotional books with you. Like sometimes you'd be, early, like, oh, I got to wrap up. I can't be late because we got this and this and this to do with the family. And I really admired that. And even my spirituality journey changed. Like it wasn't just work and it wasn't just my marriage and it wasn't just, my confidence or anxiety or depression or whatever it was I was going through. Even my walk with God changed. And there's still like a little Dr. Torre I keep with me till this day. So I was just wondering, like, I know you are so good at what you do. Like, do you ever get a chance to like receive that and sit in that and be like?
So it's so funny that you said that. So, so my birthday was last Wednesday, and I had so many clients. First of all, I'm getting emotional. Remember it. And then secondly, all these texts or these inboxes of, you've changed my life.
You're gonna make me cry.
Oh God, it's just, and it's interesting because I'll never forget the first. Oh my God, our makeup outfit.
I know.
The first time somebody came to me, I was working at the prison. I was doing my internship, and I worked at this halfway facility. So women who had offended but had good record, good report, were able to come and stay, call it at a transitional center, and work and get more money half of the day, and then come back and be on the campus. And at that time, I was married to my first husband, so my name was Hood. And one of my residents ran up to me. I had just pulled up. My internship was not a paid internship. And she said, "Oh, my Miss Hood, I did such and so that you told me to do, and this happened, and I just want to thank you, and I just thank God for you." Da, da, da. That was the first time that my purpose and my work did this. And I remember calling my dad, and I said, "Daddy, it was better than a paycheck." And he was like, "What?"
Your daddy is old school.
He's old school. He's like, "Are you?" He goes, and he told me, he said, "I worry about you because you've always wanted to make the world better." He said, "You were that little girl that you wanted people to be happy and not to hurt." And so to have people now say to me, "Oh my God, you've done this," or "This is what you mean to me," or bring me gifts, or go on vacations and come back with things for me. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
it is, it's very eye-opening. It's very scary.
Is it?
It's scary because even though I feel like I have the right mindset about what I do, and I know that I always lead with my heart and I always lead with God, it's scary because I realize I got to stay accountable.
It's a blessing and a responsibility.
It's a blessing and it's a responsibility. And it's one of those things like I'm on vacation out of the country. I get that phone call or that text. I got to respond. You know, I don't feel comfortable just pushing my client off saying, well, you know, and so there's a boundary issue. It's a lot of things that it encompasses. And I'm going to tell you, it's a lot of people that are therapists that should not be.
I can only imagine.
They're not called. I'm sorry. I really feel like this is an anointed position. I'm not saying that I'm a pastor or anything like that, but I am saying that I am sitting in space and time with a person who could be thinking about killing themselves.
Yes.
Who could be thinking about killing somebody else? Who could be thinking about ending something that is very prosperous and beneficial in their life, but they can't see straight?
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like, there really is just gifts beyond explanation. Like, there's certain things that you just can't teach.
Yeah.
You just can't teach, right?
Yes.
You could give a person all the theories, but yeah, it's scary to think that some people are in it just for a paycheck. And therapists are not the only profession. I think about like police officers who, you're talking about life and death. And with therapy, there are people who really are in dark places and really need that help, you know?
And you can miss it. And don't get me wrong, like, I don't feel like I'm God or, you know, but my thing is always, I don't want to misread. Because a person may be coming to me the very first time and they could have made up their mind. If this don't work, I'm going to end it. It's a lot of responsibility.
Do you think about that every time you get a new client?
Not every time, but I have had. And she later on told me she had just come off a suicide watch. So like, when you sign yourself in or when people sign you in, sometimes it's 3 days, sometimes it's 7 days, just depending on what they see when you come in, right? But usually they won't release you until you immediately have somebody that you're going to see every week or sometimes twice a week. Until
like a treatment plan.
Right, a treatment plan, right? So she came in and I still see her.
Wow.
I've been seeing her 9 years,
Dang.
I think. But she came in and she sat down and she told me, she said, "There's no help for me. I don't want to be here. I only agreed to come because the hospital said I had to get signed out. I'm not sure I'm going to make it." And I sat there and she held her head down the entire session. She barely made eye contact. Wow. And I started praying in my head. Lord, let me say the right thing, right? And I told her, I said, "You don't have to do anything. We can just sit here in this space together." She told me later, she said, "That session changed my life."
I believe it.
And so those are things I don't take that for granted.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like, no matter what you do, like, if we lost touch or whatever, like, I know you, my aunties know you, my husband knows you, because there were so many seasons where I really, really needed you, and you were there. You were there. There was like some seasons where I was seeing you once a week, and sometimes be like, Tori, I know I just saw you on Thursday. I need to come back on Tuesday because stuff was going on. And I think the thing for me with therapy is like it was a safe place to deconstruct the things that I was thinking and make sense of them, but also to have someone who knew what the hell they were talking about. Because you can't get advice from everywhere.
That's true.
You can't, right?
Yeah.
And especially when you're like in a fragile place, because, for example, like my parents, for example, I'm a child of immigrant, and, sometimes I'll tell my dad stuff, and there's nobody who loves me more than my father, my parents, both of them. But my God, sometimes when I would come to them with stuff, they would literally, it'd be so abrasive and so judgmental. So the intention is there, of course, but the delivery would sometimes break me or send me further into like a spiral. And I think for us, when I was seeing you, there was always a safe place to be able to pick apart things and figure out. And you were always, let me tell you, out of all of my therapists, you were always good for a resource. And I love the homework. So some things that you've given me that when I tell you that, I don't even think you understand the extent of how many other people that you've helped, because for every person you help, they're also sharing that information. I have at least 10 friends who love Louise Hay, and we all cry because you told me. And they're like, bitch, what are you doing? Like, you done moved to Atlanta? And I was like, let me tell you, it's my therapist. And I'm doing these affirmations and mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Like being like not drunk? Like, what are you saying?
Wow.
And there's people who years after you told me and I told them, they came to me 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, like, I listened to Louise Hay, you can change your life. And oh my God, like I stopped doing drugs, or oh my God, I got custody of my kid. Like friends who they transformed their lives. And I don't think I've ever had a chance to share this with you, but like literally, what is it? Like exponential impact that you have. And so I couldn't let you leave without really like expressing my sincere gratitude to you.
Well,
And it
thank
also
you for sharing that with me, because
Yeah.
that, of course, feels amazing.
Yeah.
To know.
And not even just the therapy. I think even like as a woman, I think there was like a certain level that you carried yourself. And I would ask you questions, like I would ask my mother, right? Like, tell me about like how you deal with people who don't like you, or how you put yourself together. How do you have your confidence? Because you're just, I admired you in so many different ways. Even the way you parent, right? You were one of the first therapists who was very transparent about the fact that, I remember one time I came to you crying. I was like, I'm never gonna get married. This was before Fred. And you said, girl, like, even if you have 10 years, you're so young. I think I was like 25 at the time.
Yeah.
And I think I married Fred like 8 months later. I was dramatic, just so dramatic. And you're like, I had kids when I was in my 30s. And I was like,
I was 29.
what? And I would always forget your age because you look amazing.
Thank
And you were like, I had kids in my 30s and I was in school and I was bartending and I was a waitress. And I was like, and so I really felt like because I saw you do it, I was like, okay, I can do it. Even now, because, I still don't have kids, when my clock ticks, I still look at like, well, Tori's fine ass.
Oh, just sweet.
I was like, it's fine. And I hold on to so many of those nuggets till today when those anxious thoughts come up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I just really wanted to express that to you. But we did have a few things that we wanted to talk about, so I want to make sure I get into those.
Okay.
One of the things that you talked to me about was financial therapy. And I would really love for you to kind of share your thoughts on that, because a lot of our audience is mainly entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, or young professionals. And there were so many money lessons that you also taught me about, like, we grew up on like food stamps and, a broken household in the sense of like not a 2-parent household, constantly moving, not a lot of stability, things like that. And you were the first person who kind of talked about like poverty mindset and feeling like believing that there's not an abundance. And so you're always chasing instead of attracting and trusting God to give it to you. So I think all entrepreneurs need to hear this, but like, please share your thoughts on financial therapy.
Well, it's something that I started working on in 2015, 2016 with my partner, Sybil Slade, here in Atlanta. And what we do basically is teach within our community our relationship with money based on childhood experiences and aspirations and dreams, and learning different ways of managing and coping with our money based on the concepts or the constructs that we teach, right? And so basically, especially in our community, there's usually a whole situation of lack. It's about not having enough. Like even I did a workshop prior to coming here, as I shared with you, at Morehouse, and we talked about, what did you learn as a kid growing up, and how did you feel about asking your parents for money, and what messaging, verbal or nonverbal, did your parents display or model to you about money? Because thank God, with social media, we are now starting to see an abundance of African American millionaires and entrepreneurs just springing up at very young ages. But basically, our template has been, we don't talk about it.
It's very taboo to talk about how much money you make or any of those things.
Mom and dad comes up with it in the fourth quarter, the last inning, and boom, you got what you wanted. But you don't necessarily understand the playbook. You don't necessarily understand what it took. One of the funny stories I love to share is when my oldest got her first job. She's working at Marco's Pizza, and she was like, oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And da-da-da. My husband and I are sitting back like, well, who's going to give it a talk? Like, who's FICA? Who's Social Security? Like, do you understand what taxes are? Do you understand what investment? And so, we as people are just now really starting to talk about how money is a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool.
Yes.
But we are mesmerized by money, and there's a spirit to money. And so if you don't have the right mindset around money, that spirit's going to come and that spirit's going to go, right? And so trying to figure out what mindset do I need to acquire so that my money is utilized the most effective way possible.
Yeah.
And that's basically what financial therapy is teaching you to understand why you feel the way you feel about money and how you need to change it so that money is more advantageously used. Yeah.
What are some of the red flags that you think, like for listeners who are like, okay, I want to investigate, my relationship with money, right? What are some of the questions that you think that they should ask themselves, or even resources? Because I know you're good for one.
Well, the first thing is, am I living outside my means? And that's a very easy question. Like, I'm always coming up negative. Is my bank account always being, taxed because I'm cashing checks my ass can't cash? You know what I'm saying? It's like, am I doing things that I know are not beneficial to my bank account and my bottom dollar? Am I trying to live my best life, on coins? So one of the first things is asking yourself, where is my money going? Because once you can find the money trail, then you can find the behaviors that played into that money trail, right?
And why you felt like you had to make those decisions.
Why you felt like you had to make those. Am I a spender? Am I a saver? Am I impulsive? Am I, confident and very assured in what I do with my money? Am I like, oh, it's the end of the month? Electric bill ain't gonna get paid because I want them red bottoms. Like, where are my thoughts and my behaviors leading to my bank account?
And then what are your beliefs around money?
Absolutely. Because, one of the things that, some people look at money through faith, like, oh, God's going to provide. And to an extent, that's part of my foundation. But I also know that God helps those that helps themselves. So you got to go out there and you got to create, money. You got to create product to actually do, you know what I'm saying?
So and you have to be a good shepherd of what he does give you.
You got to be a good steward.
A steward, thank you.
Yes. You gotta say, you know what? Okay, I gotta have some place to stay. I gotta have the light bills on. Those things. What are your priorities? Asking yourself too, if I had excess amount of money, where would it go? That's gonna tell you a lot about your relationship with money. Are you a philanthropist? You want to help other people? You're going to give it all away? You're going to save some for later? You're going to have some for what are your aspirations around money and why? Most people who become very successful came from a place of lack. That was a motivation, right?
It was definitely mine.
That's a motivation, right? They saw everybody else have things that they didn't have, or they saw people get opportunities they didn't have. So they either got very lucky and fell into a position where they could make money, or they planned it.
Yeah.
But I would tell any young Black entrepreneur, person of color, you need to have a plan. Because once you have a plan, then you can always go and edit the plan. But if you're just flying by the seat of your pants with your money,
As she looks at me, we've had this conversation many times.
it's a fool and his money soon shall part. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you don't have a plan for it, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something, right?
I do remember you telling me that.
What are you saying no to?
Yeah.
Am I saying no to abundance later, retirement,
Security.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because right now I want to go on this $5,000 vacation.
Yeah.
And I know this is my last $5,000 in the bank.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I know. For me personally, my lack mindset convinced me. I had the belief that this is the only opportunity I'm going to get. And that bled into so many, like, even when it came to like dating, I know in the beginning, I was like, I'm never going to find, and you were like, that's one of the faith conversations that came in, right? Where I fundamentally believed there wasn't enough to go around because of my childhood, right? And that I had to be really intentional about going and getting and chasing and that kind of spirit instead of like...
What you're talking about is trauma. So the trauma from your childhood imprinted and left a message of, I got to get it quick and fast, because it's not enough to go around.
And I think the same thing would happen when it came to spending, right? Like an opportunity would come for me to like travel, and I would think, oh my God, I have to do it now because there's never going to be another opportunity. And it wasn't until we had those conversations that I realized, oh, it's a lack. Like, why do I believe that I'll never be able to go to XYZ place? Well, like, where does that come from? And I'm still working on it, to be honest, but like, recognizing when those thoughts, because those thoughts zoom by so fast that you're just acting and you're like, wait, how did I get here? I literally just said I wasn't going to buy nothing else. And you're like, dang, it kind of kicked into overdrive and autopilot, if you will. So I wanted to ask you, like, what are some of the positive thought frames that people listening can adopt to kind of counter, either that lack mindset, that poverty mindset, or any negative relationships with money?
The first thing is to identify the negative. Like we are so, we're creatures of habit, and we get on autopilot, and most of us speak and think very negatively, and we don't even acknowledge that. We don't know that. So the first thing is to start to slow down enough to think about what you think about. Like, why do I have 50 negative thoughts in an hour and only 3 positive? Like, to start to see it, right? And then to start to simply insert more positivity. What we focus on is what we bring in. That's the law of attraction. If I focus on anything, good or bad, that's what's going to come back to me. So starting to understand, how do I process, right? And then starting to insert more positive, more productive things, but also creating a vision for it. Like, okay, what does a positive outcome look like for me? You can't go anywhere if you don't know what you're going towards, right? So is it a better line of credit so that I can get the house that I want? Is it more streams of income coming in so that I have enough money to make better decisions? But you got to start some place of understanding, this is what I'm doing that needs to change, and this is going to be the change. I'm going to become more focused on positive thinking. I'm going to practice gratitude at night before I go to bed at night.
You know what? That was another big lesson. Like, I didn't realize the power of gratitude until you and I talked about that. And the more I researched, like, gratitude is the number one emotion that, like, it's like a gateway drug to like happiness and contentment. And they did there was experiments that I would tell you about where they ask up like 50 people like how they're feeling, one-on-one interviews, right? Like, how are you feeling? Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. And then they would have them write a letter to the most influential person in their lives, and then they would challenge them to call that person immediately after on the spot, and then they would rate their
It felt completely
all
different.
of them felt completely different after practicing gratitude. And there's so many studies And so anytime I'm feeling any kind of way, I try my best to go back to gratitude, because it's like it's an alignment with my values, right? But two, it always freaking works.
One of the fastest ways to pull a person out of depression is to encourage them to go and volunteer. When you volunteer, you are identifying that there is someone outside of myself in pain. B, I can be of service. And C, oh my God, I'm so grateful that this is not my issue. This isn't my problem.
Yeah.
And so we're able to see life isn't as bad as I thought.
Yep.
I can start looking at the silver lining and understanding, I got some problems, but I don't have this problem.
You said something one day to me. You said, thank goodness for the problems I don't have.
Yes, Lord.
And I was like, that was one of the days I was in the car downstairs out of your office, like, where did she get this shit from? But you're 100% right. Till this day, I try my best to remember, thank goodness for the problems that I don't have. Because my God, I'll keep the ones that I got. That's fine. I mean, we struggling with, and she got hands, but I'll keep these, because some of the other people's I don't want them. I don't want them.
Yes. And to think too that there are some problems out there that make mine look so insignificant.
And just silly.
So small.
And like almost like embarrassed. Like, I can't believe I was crying over that. When there's people who are going through X, Y, and Z, and there's no line of sight out, and there's the situations that seem so bleak. And that actually segues really well into the next question I was going to ask you, right? So entrepreneurs, right? I know that you've helped people all across industries, all across races, religions, which is one of the things I really loved about you. What is a common mental health issue that you see with entrepreneurs?
I actually have a blog on my site about the psychological concerns of entrepreneurship. It's isolation.
Really?
It's being alone in it. Like, many entrepreneurs are working from home, so they're isolated, or they're traveling a lot, so they're isolated, or they're in an industry where they don't get to network as much with other people in the same industry. As a therapist, like, I remember going from being in like a clinical practice where I had other clinicians and other doctors that all worked in the same building. We shared patients. But when I went into private practice, I was in that room by myself. Yeah, my clients would come in and I would have exchange with them, but I'm helping them. So if I'm having a hard day and they come in and they're having a hard day, when they leave, I've got to get myself up for the next person. And so that isolation that entrepreneurship can cause can really increase the possibility of depression. Okay. That's the first thing. The isolation also of the financing behind it. Like, it took a while for me to realize, I can get this type of loan, and because I was by myself most of the time. So getting out, networking, meeting other therapists, meeting other business, women in business, allowed me to get more resources and more understanding of what the entrepreneur game is. But there's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of fear around, I'm gonna fail. They say most businesses, if they don't make 5 years, that's it.
Yeah.
Then there's this whole thing for dinosaurs such as myself.
Stop it.
Marketing and social media. Most women in my age group or older, they're like, I hate posting. So it's that whole thing of trying to stay relevant, trying to stay connected to everything that flows within this global.
And it's changing all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're constantly having to be on your game about learning more, doing more. And so there's a mindset of always having to rejuvenate, So those things can be very daunting on a person that's not really sure they want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. What are some easy things that you can do? Like, what are some easy recommendations you have for entrepreneurs who may be struggling with isolation?
Networking, finding other people that do what you do. One of my girlfriends, who is my trainer, she's a personal trainer and a nutritionist, she was one of the people that complained a lot about social media. And I started talking to her, and she's like, I want to talk to you and find out what you're doing. And I told her, I said, start following other trainers. I admire the therapists. I have therapists that follow me, and you can glean information and just have somebody to talk to. I have therapists that I talk to in California, New York, Florida, just to be fresh and relevant and to find out, how to do things differently, taking classes. Now, in any type of healthcare situation, you got to take continued education. So when you go to these continued education seminars and workshops, you meet other clinicians all over the world. But the networking aspect is very important. I don't care what industry you're in.
Yeah.
Find a way to network. Find a way to socialize and engage with people that are doing what you're doing.
I love that. Do you find that there are unique challenges from a therapist perspective for entrepreneurs of color? What have you seen?
Financing, getting the money, getting to the money, figuring out how to get your credit right, figuring out that once you get a business line of credit, what that enables and allows. And the other thing too, as an African American or person of color entrepreneur, again, is networking. Talking to more people that look like you, working in a circle where we're feeding each other, playing off of each other. Since this whole social media thing and me being more socially visible on IG and makeup artists, hair artists, people that I have a meeting with a woman next week. She's going to work on my website. She's in Chicago.
Yeah.
Right? But we need these things so that we can further expand our hand.
Yeah.
To the global market.
Yeah. I think some things that I've seen, in terms of like not being willing to share your ideas in our community, because that lack mindset or fear of like, if I tell them, they're going to take my idea or whatever. What recommendations do you have to increase like collaboration and to release fear related to your business?
Well, it's funny that you brought this up because I even struggle with this myself. So I have created a tool that I'm releasing in a couple of months. And I went to my hairdresser and I was sharing with her my thoughts at the time. And I told her, I said, well, I don't know if I have a large enough spin on it. She goes, what? You got a voice. People want to hear what you have to say. It doesn't matter if it's been said before. It hasn't been said by you through your experiences. And that meant the world to me because that allowed me to understand I am uniquely and wonderfully made. So I have the people that God has brought to me to help and vice versa, right? So we get so caught up on, I'm gonna hold on to this because somebody will steal it. Nobody can steal you. Your imprint, your brand. That's what branding is. People talk about, you gotta build your brand, and people roll their eyes at it. Building your brand and saying, this is my footprint on earth. This is how I show up. This is what I bring to the table. And it also allows you to say that these are the people that I'm commissioned to help or to be a part of. Nobody can take that from you.
Wow. Yeah. And it gives you a different level of confidence when you are grounded in that because the things that are for you will never miss you.
They'll never miss you. I have clients that have told me, I got a client right now, she started with me in insurance and she went to private pay. She moved out of state. I do coaching and counseling. She's like, I can't lose you. And I'm not starting all over again.
Yeah.
So we still have a connection. Like you're building, if you're truly in your purpose and if you're truly doing what you're passionate about, your imprint and your hand in that is so necessary because there's somebody that is uniquely connected just to your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just so important for entrepreneurs because it can get very easy for somebody to say, well, I want to do a t-shirt business, but everybody got a t-shirt, but I want to do a podcast. I thought about that for a while too. Like, why would I do another podcast? There's a million podcasts out already. But to your point, there may be one person that I can help who my experience lends itself just right for them to hear it and it lands on their ears differently than if you were to say it or if somebody else was to say it. And I agree with you that being connected to your why and your purpose, especially if you have a connection with a creator or a God, it helps you kind of move forward in that space and be committed. Because they say, how many types of bread are in the bread aisle? Right? Imagine if
the most populated aisle in the grocery store is the soda, right? It's the soda aisle. How many versions of Sprite are there? How many versions of cola are there? How many, you know what I'm saying? Like, just do it afraid. do it afraid. Like, yes, it's scary as hell. You think people are going to see through you or see something that you don't want them to see. That's pointless. The point is, I have something to offer. Let me offer it.
I love that. I love that. And I think some of the things, like for example, the Four Agreements is another book that you told me about that I still have on my shelf till this day. And one of them is, I think, don't take it personally.
Yes.
Talk to me about how entrepreneurs can be more fearless and more committed to the community they're commissioned to help, and working through that fear. Because it's easy to say, "Oh, just get on stage and just talk."
I go back to, again, the networking, because in the networking, you get inspired. You meet people that are doing what you're doing or doing it on a higher level or higher plane or a different plane. And it allows you to say, well, if she can do it, I can do it, right? It allows you to get out of your way and get out of your headspace so that you can see other people's creativity, which allows your own creativity to flow. You know, Marianne Williamson, one of my favorite poems is, who am I to be great? Who am I not to be? Our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate, it's that we're great, right? So when we're around other people and we see their greatness, it's contagious, right? So, for me, when I first opened private practice, I had a couple of colleagues that were like, aren't you sick of that? Don't you want to be on a bigger scale? I'm like, eventually. But this is what I'm called to do. This is I'm cutting my teeth. Let me get and then I figured out, like, I really, really do enjoy this. I do want to do it in different ways, but I want to also do it uniquely my way. When I went into private practice, coming out of a clinic or a clinical setting, I had to do treatment plans and therapy the way they wanted me to do it. But now I get to do it the way I want to do it, right? Within reason of insurance companies or whatnot, but still. And I think that's across any industry. It's like when you become an entrepreneur, it's like you go from working for someone to now eventually consulting to now this is my niche. And I get to do it my way.
Yeah, I love that. In your entrepreneurship journey, what were some of the things that you had to emotionally overcome? Because that office that you had in Buckhead, baby, what? The furniture, I remember the rug. I think you had like a super colorful rug. Everything was intentional, from the waiting room to your website. But what are some of the things that you had to overcome with all of your experience and all of your knowledge?
That people would show up. I remember my husband teases me sometimes now because most of the time I'm booked up. Like, I'm just, very busy.
I had to book my Saturdays like 5 weeks in advance. You were booked and busy.
And I remember when I first started, I was in Fayetteville. I wasn't in Buckhead. And I asked him, I said, you think I'll be successful? I said, you think people will really come and let me be their therapist? He was like, yes, baby, keep going.
When was this that you were asking? Like, how many years of experience, just for context?
I had probably at that time, maybe 5-6 years experience. Right?
But you were still questioning it.
But I was still questioning it because it was something I hadn't done. Even though I had practiced therapy and I knew how to write a treatment plan and I knew how to help a person, I hadn't done it on my own. And so now, every now and then, we'll be out, and I can't go anywhere most of the time now in Atlanta and not run into somebody.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh, God, don't let me run into nobody today. Da, 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 da. And he'll whisper in my ear, you think they'll come?
Now you ducking and dodging people in Publix and Whole Foods.
He'll say, you think my business will work? You think it'll? I'll be like, shut up. But yeah, I think get out of your way. Like I'm still having to, in some ways, get out of my way, to be honest.
Really?
When I created my tool, my cards that are coming out, and my daughter did all the graphics and the art on it, and we were sitting down, and she was like, "Okay, Mom, just write everything out that you want it to be." I started writing, and I started, and I kept, and I was like, I know that much. And it blew my mind, because then I thought about it. I'm like, this is what I'm constantly teaching every day, like. And I'll never forget one of my colleagues. She's kind of like a big sister to me, even though she's younger than me. Her name is Robin May. Robin and I were sitting, and Robin is, pastor's wife. She's on a really big scale now. She really is. She came to my office one day and she goes, "You have your doctorate. You've written a book. What are you afraid of exactly?" She's like, "Torre, you are ready." And I was like, "I don't know." Like, she goes, "You got the look, you got the brains, like, what are you doing?" And I'm sitting there like, so I'm just not ready yet. And I told her, I said, "I don't think I have anything uniquely to say that hasn't been said." And she was like, she sat up in her chair. She goes, "What?"
I'm looking at you like you're crazy.
She was like, "Are you kidding me?" She goes, "It's been plenty of people I've talked to that hasn't been, nobody's more ready than you are right now." And I'm like, she's, "Girl, get out your way." She said, "Girl, get out of your way." And it is, it's a very interesting place, because when you have a gift and you do it naturally, you don't understand the weight of it.
Listen, and I don't know a single entrepreneur who does have a natural gift who doesn't also need to be pushed, because I think it's almost like that thing where it's like, well, this is just who I am. This is just, I've always known how to bake pie. I always know how to do hair. So like, how can I charge for something that I didn't go to school or something like that? It's so interesting that all entrepreneurs seem to struggle with that when it is a gift.
Because it's something that's with you, just like your eye color, your height, or, it's just something that's with you. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest, in the beginning, I used to be in awe of people that would charge for it. I felt almost like, this is just knowledge I'm giving you, right? And Robin really, again, to that credit, was like, "You don't get us away for free." She goes, "Torre, people will pay to see you, to talk to you. You have a lot to give." And I'm just sitting there like,
where does that come from? Because even like me and all my friends, there's always that hump of charging people, or not making your ebook free, or not making your talks free, especially when you're doing it to like help a community, especially our women of color, men of color, right, entrepreneurs. Why is it so hard for us to charge?
Self-esteem. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's not like low self-esteem, like I'm not worthy. It's that self-esteem of, this comes so naturally to me. How do I have the right to charge you, right? Right? But now I understand, like, I'm giving you knowledge I had to fight and work for. I got a degree behind me that still got some student loans. like, yes, I am going to do my due diligence for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you overcome that? I'm still working through it, which is why I'm asking.
Let me tell you, so because when people go from a salaried corporate job, the money comes, they've been in that field, they've been in that vein for so long, there's an expectation, and entrepreneurship is a different mindset. And so to shift completely into that mindset is to say, I can't survive without this. I have to charge for this if I want to. And if I want to go even further, I've got to go further. But the beauty also is, well, what am I going to offer? What am I going to give for that fee? Now I have a gut. I know that I give people weight. I know that I give them value. I give them a product. I give them something that they can utilize. Even just sitting here listening to you, I'm sitting here thinking, damn, I forgot I did all that.
I ain't forget.
But obviously, it was useful, right?
Yeah.
And I think the more that you do that, the more that you understand that what I am offering has value, has weight, then you start to understand that it is necessary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
It is necessary.
Okay, and before you go, I absolutely need you to share with our audience the routines that you have. Because one thing about you, I think you take immaculate care of yourself. And I learned how to, my mom is one of those people who's like an effortless beauty. She don't do a whole lot of creams, a whole lot of makeup, and girl, she put mascara on, her eyes gonna be running allergies. She hairless as well. She didn't pass that to me, unfortunately. But you were somebody who was like so meticulous about how you cared for yourself, but you just did it. I would be like, how you do your makeup every damn day? You're always done. So aside from like some of the beauty things that we've talked about privately, like What are your routines to care for yourself as an entrepreneur, a mom, a therapist, a wife, child? Like, what are some of the non-negotiables you have to maintain so your cup runneth over and you continue to give to people in a way that they looking for you at Publix?
First and foremost, sleep.
Really?
I make sure I used to neglect myself with sleep, and I have realized that I am not effective in my prayer life, in my marriage, in my parenting, in my practice without my sleep. So if I have to go to bed sometimes at 8 o'clock, I will. It's not something that I have done a lot. I did not start really getting on this sleep routine till probably about 5 years ago.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. I lived off of 4 hours of sleep for years.
What?
Because I had 2 jobs, 2 kids, a mortgage. Before I married my second husband, I was in school, I was humping. And I was
You had a minimum of 2 jobs. Even now, you don't have just one job.
That's very true. That's very
You
true.
had like 3, 4 jobs
That's
a
very
few
true.
times.
That's very true. So sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise, I believe in it wholeheartedly, not just for looking good, but blood pressure, oxygen to the brain, clarity, creativity, um, time spent with myself. So I'm very big into, like they call it, oxidating the brain. So breath work, meditation. I don't meditate as much as I used to. I do pray a lot, but I don't meditate. I get up every morning, and probably the first 15 minutes, sometimes to an hour, just depending what's going on, I'm doing devotionals, I'm praying, I'm reading scripture, I'm spending time with God. I believe in the whole nails, hair. I'm an ex-hairdresser, so that
You look good, you feel good.
Yeah, you look good, you feel good, and I swear, standing in a salon, looking in a mirror all day long, it just curses you. It just makes you just vain. I'm sorry, it just does. You know, and you looking at new hairstyles, and you're doing new hairstyles on people, and you want the hairstyles. And I have clients that say, Dr. Torre, your hair is never the same. I'm like, and it never will be. So just don't try to peg me in a hairstyle
Nope.
because it ain't gonna happen. It's
I
gonna
literally
change.
I have never seen you in this hairstyle, and I used to see you once a freaking week. So that's amazing.
It's always something different. This is part. I guess that's the little bit of creative edge I have. And I believe in like your checkups, your health. Like I take care of my skin, my body, my teeth, like all those things that I think we need to have when we're out here selling ourselves. Because entrepreneurship is selling yourself too. You know, when you talk about my brand, what I'm saying is this is my brand. Do you buy into it? Right?
Yeah.
And that encapsulates everything, right?
Yeah.
And then also just really good quality time with people I love. I believe in that. I believe in the brunches with my friends. I believe in going and visiting my daughter and spending the night with her and, you know, not always making her come home to see me and, you know, having time with my husband alone, having time with my mother alone, with my father alone, with my brothers alone. Like, I believe in that family quality time. You need to have it.
And it makes you a better...
Makes you a better person.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this was amazing. Is there anything else, any other wisdom or just messages on your heart in the space that you're in today that you just want to impart on anybody who's listening?
As far as entrepreneurship is concerned, just get moving. Whatever's keeping your feet stagnant, pray and ask God if that is what you believe to remove the fear. If that's not what you believe, start to affirm yourself. You know, go to affirmations and speak positive things. Like, I cannot stress enough, you know, what you feed will grow. Feed yourself positivity. Believe that you deserve to have good things happen to you, for you, and through you. Believe that.
I love that.
Because the world would just be better if we had that mind. If everybody believed that good things should come to me, good things are for me, life is for me, and then I can be for others, that I can be a vessel. Just think if everybody would just shift into finding that place, the world would be different.
Amazing. Okay, tell us when we can find your cards. Tell us about the cards and then tell us where
So
we
you
can
can find anything about me at drtorre.org. So drtorre.org. And the cards will be on there. I'm revamping my website as we speak.
Okay.
And then you can catch me at Dr. Torre 8 on IG, which is where I spend most of my social media time.
And tell us about the cards.
So the cards, the first set that's coming out is going to be on mood regulation. So it's going to help with anxiety and depression. It's going to have affirmations in it.
So I need to get 2 packs.
It's going to have a lot of stuff in it. And so I'm excited. And they're beautifully done. And I think that it will definitely help for conversation and just education for people.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
stopping
you for
by.
having me.
This was such a good conversation.
I
Oh
so
my God.
enjoyed it. I learned
Yes.
as much as I think you did.
You know what? That's always because you know a few things. Listen, but thank you so much for stopping by. I absolutely adore you. You know that.
I adore you
but
too. I love you too.
Thanks.